All right, tubers, Madam Roy back once again. Hope everybody is doing really well today. I unfortunately have been having major allergy issues, but I wanted to go ahead and do a quick live stream again, give everybody a opportunity to see this computer once again. And I'll give everybody a few minutes to get here. This was not announced, so I figured you guys might take a few minutes to get here, and some of you will probably see it in post production. I have been working on this computer. This is the custom built Pentium 3. We're calling this the P&P computer that I picked up from the CHKD thrift store on Military Highway for about $10. I don't have the exact amount I paid because it was 25% off. Eric Brunhammer's here, says hola, hola to you, which means hello in Spanish. So, what are my plans for this computer other than what I've done with it so far? Well, let's talk about what I've actually done to this computer. Since you guys saw this last, I haven't changed it too much. Now, I did pick up a e-machines. It was an old Windows XP era e-machines desktop from the thrift store about 2 days ago. Nothing special. It had a AMD Athlon X2 3800 dual core processor. The motherboard was pretty much shot. It would turn on and post and boot once in a while, but it wouldn't do much else. But the reason that I picked that computer up and I paid $5 for that one was it had a 200 gigabyte Seagate IDE hard drive. Now, if you guys are nerds like me, geeks like me, whatever you want to call us, and you know anything about ID hard drives, to find an ID hard drive of that size is extremely rare. And what I've done, I've actually put that computer in here as the slave drive. And I'll go ahead and show you guys. Right now, I'm actually copying over some music, and that's something I'm actually having an issue with. I put in a USB 2.0 card with a VIA chipset, got the drivers installed, but unfortunately, it's still transferring at USB 1 speed. So I'm assuming the drivers are at fault. But I'll go ahead and try to open up my computer. It's actually really slow at the moment because, again, I'm transferring these files over. Probably should have timed this a little bit better, but we'll make do. Let's see if I get my mouse cursor. There we go. Oh, and again, it'll take a minute to open up. Okay. So you guys see right there, you have the C drive and the D drive. Now, the C drive is the Mac Store 80 gigabyte drive that I put in here when I first got this, because this particular computer did not have any hard drives in it when I first got it. You can see right there, used almost 3 gigs. We still have 73.3 gigabytes free. Now, if I move over here to the D drive, this is that 200 gigabyte Seagate hard drive that I picked up. Now, you might be noticing something right here, and that is that Windows only sees 127 gigabytes. That is because in Windows 98, I believe the max you can see is 136 gigabytes. There's actually a capacity cap, if you will, in Windows 98. And even if that wasn't a restriction, this BIOS in this computer can only see hard drives up to 136 gigabyte. And let's face it, back in 2000 when this computer was made, anything over 30 or 40 gigabytes was ridiculous. Never, not to mention hard drives that were exceeding, 160, 200 gigabytes. So I am losing a little bit of the capacity here, but that's okay. I can live with that. It's just nice to have a larger hard drive in here. So what my plans are is anything I install onto the C drive, I'm also going to go ahead and put onto the D drive as well. That'll pretty much be my backup drive. Haven't really done anything here. These drives are all the same. This is, I believe, a 32-speed CD-ROM drive. I'll have to double check on that. I believe that's what it said when I took the case apart. This is the Hewlett-Packard CD Writer Plus. This one is a 4x4x24 drive, so it writes at 4 speed, rewrites at 4 speed, and reads at 24 speed. And for now, these drives work perfectly fine. As a matter of fact, this drive, even though it's slow, burns discs very, very well. And I did put a post up on Facebook a couple of days ago that I remember when I had my original CD Writer Plus, I had issues with buffer overrun errors where the cache that's built into the drive would the data would overflow that and it would spit out errors, and I'd be lucky to get maybe one out of every three burn attempts would actually complete successfully. I have since burned 5 or 6 discs with this particular drive, and I've had no such errors. So either this was a more reliable drive, maybe a later revision, or more likely somebody has updated the firmware in this drive, because yes, that was actually a thing back then. You could actually update firmware in CD burner drives. Again, down here, I just got your lowly 3.5-inch 1.44 megabyte floppy drive. Works perfectly fine. Didn't have to do anything to that. If I do ever have to replace one of these drives, I probably have a cache of 10 or 15 of these things sitting in my closet, so not too worried about that. I just love this case. I realize it's nothing special. You saw a lot of these cases back in the day. I just think the light and dark gray two-tone is really appealing to me. I actually like the translucent plastic that they put on here, and then the green and red lights. And it's funny, this light is almost more of a pinkish color, and the color you're seeing is pretty much true to the color that I'm seeing. The camera on the cell phone really isn't tampering with that shade of red too severely. Let's go ahead and bring you guys to the back. I will show you that, again, not too much has changed. Pretty much the only thing that has changed in the back is the addition of this 4-port USB 2.0 card. And again, this is a 4-port USB 2.0 card with a VIA chipset. It's a VIA 6400 series chipset that I've gotten the drivers quite right on. I think that's probably what the issue is. It is working, but again, it's only working at USB 2.0 speed, or 1.0 speed. I need to try and get it to work at 2.0 speed. Man, I cannot talk tonight. Let me turn you guys around. All right, so those are the updates so far for this custom-built Pentium 3 system. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I've done to this, other than, from what you saw last time, other than the addition of the USB card and the addition of that extra hard drive. I don't think I've actually done anything else to it. I do have a treat for you guys. It's transferring data, but I am going to go ahead and try to open this up on camera live for you. So give me just a second. I'm going to try to do this again without turning anything off, hopefully. And we'll see if I make a mess here. You guys know I'm not the most coordinated person. All right, I think we're about ready. Let me turn this around and we'll go ahead and take the screws out. So these cases are pretty easy to open. I mean, it's literally just 2 screws here, one on top, one on the bottom. Got my trusty, let's see, what the heck are these things? Work Zone, Aldi brand screwdrivers. I mean, they get the job done. They're not perfect, but they do work. Now, when I take these screws out, if it's not magnetic, the screwdriver, I'll usually just take it out part of the way and then unscrew it with my fingers. But luckily, these do have the magnetic tip, so I can go ahead and just unscrew everything really easily. Something so satisfying about that, isn't it? So the 2 screws, and pull the case back and pull it off. And voila! Here is the vintage system in all of its glory. Let's see what we got up here. Power supply I did also replace. I don't know if I mentioned that last time. This is a Dell power supply from 2003. I believe this came out of a Dell Inspiron 2400. The original power supply in here had bloated capacitors and did work, but would cut out every once in a while. There's that Pentium 3 CPU with the heat sink and the fan. The fan is really blowing pretty hard right now. I always thought that these fans were a little underpowered if they had the Pentium 3s. And most of you guys probably noticed this is not the slot 1 processor Pentium 3. This is the later socket Pentium 3. I believe they were socket 370, but somebody can correct me if I'm wrong there. It's been a long time. Here is the motherboard's chipset. It is a VIA VT82C693A that dates from right around 2000. Actually, the BIOS is from 2000. So, yeah, I mean, you're right around there. Eric said 100% PGA 370. Yeah, I thank you. I appreciate that because I honestly couldn't remember off the top of my head. The South Bridge is down there. I can't really tell what it is. You guys might be able to make that out. For expansion ports, we have an AGP slot right there, which is not populated. The video card that's in here is actually a PCI graphics card. That is an upgrade that I am going to consider. If I can find a NVIDIA TNT2 or maybe an NVIDIA Riva 64 gig AGP card, I will be buying that because it'll still be better than the PCI version that's in here now. Over here, this is how I had to do the 2 hard drives. Now, cable management in computers of this vintage is not really a thing, and it's very hard because instead of having a little tiny SATA cable, you have these giant honkin' IDE cables, which are very hard to manage. I did my best to try and group them as closely together as possible, but this is about as good as it gets when it comes to IDE cable management. Top drive here is the 80 gig Maxter, and the one down here is the 200 gig Seagate Barracuda. These are actually getting pretty warm. What I may have to do, I may try to install a front fan in here because the way they have this situated, you can see there is very little room, almost no room between the 2 hard drives. So either what I'm going to do is either put a front fan in here, or better yet, I might rig up a fan up here that'll kind of help circulate the air better and just blow it out of the back of the case. Here's the back of the 3.5-inch floppy drive. Again, nothing super special there. You have your floppy connector and then your floppy data connector, I should say, and floppy power connector right there. And then this is just the way I have the 2 optical drives situated. Now, I could put in a third optical drive here if I want to, something like a DVD-ROM. But to do that, I would have to remove one of the hard drives because this only has 2 IDE channels, and you can only have a max of 2 drives hooked up to each channel. So 2 times 2 is 4. That means I can have a total of 4 IDE drives hooked up to this motherboard at any given time. And that's what I have now. And that might be something I'll revisit in the future. Got somebody messaging something. Keith1212 says, I have a couple slot ones at 400 and 450 megahertz. I also have a Coppermind 1 gigahertz Pentium 3 system. Those are kind of rare. Back a few years ago, I had a Compact Desk Pro EN with that 1 gigahertz Coppermind Pentium 3, and unfortunately, I had to get rid of it when I did my cleanup, and I probably never should. I actually probably should have just kept it. Going down here, let me see if I can give you guys a better view of these cards. Let me try something here. Okay, there we go. That might be right. The bottom card here, this network card, this is that gigabit, Netgear gigabit card. Let me see if you guys can get a view of that Come on, focus. There it is. It's got a Realtek, an RTL 8169S chipset on there. Hopefully you guys can get a good view of that. Again, kind of overkill for this particular system, but it's the only card I had. And it is a Netgear. I don't know if I can make the model out on that or not. GA311, and it's a Rev A card, so it's an early Rev card. So, you know what? No harm, no foul. I might eventually swap that out for something like a Win network card, something more age appropriate. But for now, it gets the job done. Next to it is that Crystal chipset based sound card. Again, I believe this is a Diamond branded sound card, but it does have a Crystal CS chipset on there. And you can see I do have the DVD-ROM, or the DVD-ROM. Boy, I'm going new school. This is also, I have the CD-ROM hooked into the CD audio portion of this card. So if I do stick a audio CD in this computer, I can actually play it via the Windows 98 CD player. And I was doing that yesterday, and that feature does work. So that's something nice. Late at night, I sometimes like to put a CD in and just put it on repeat, something like Earth, Wind, and Fire, or heck, sometimes even a Joni Mitchell CD. There is that NVIDIA card in here. This is a 64 gigabyte NVIDIA GeForce MX4 card. Interesting, you can see it uses Hynix memory modules. So I think there's 4 of those. So let's see, how would that be? There'd be 16 gigabytes each. So each one of those modules right there are going to be 16 gigs each. And then, of course, right on top is that USB card. I think we got some questions here. George Stewart says hello. Hello to you, George. Keith1212 says, love the 3 ISA slots. My socket 370 motherboard has only 1 ISA slot. You know, it's funny you should bring that up, and I was going to mention this earlier. I do have some ISA cards I could put in here, but the reason I went all PCI is because of resource conflicts. When you start putting ISA cards in computers running Windows 95 or 98, and especially if you mix them with PCI cards, because ISA cards are not plug and play, you have to manually set the resources and the IRQs for each card, and I just really didn't want to do that. So that's the main reason I haven't used those slots. Now, if I ever decide to switch it up, maybe remove Windows 98 and run something like Windows 3.1 or Windows 3.11 Windows for Workgroups on here, then yes, I probably would use some ISA slots, because in that case I'd have to manually address the resources anyway, because there's no plug and play in those operating systems. Oh, here we go. Eric says, I actually tried using the poll feature on YouTube for what my next video should be. I'm glad that the results are in favor of the video I want to do. Well, that's always good. I always try to do that myself. But you know what? You got to be true to yourself. And the reason I'm doing these tech videos again is because I kind of miss doing them. Lately, I've been doing a lot of just regular vlogs, some cooking videos, and of course just regular fitness live streams. But now you see the channel might be going more tech related again. Now, that's not to say I'm going to just stop doing all the other videos as well. It's still going to be a variety channel, but for the moment, we're going to talk more about tech. And in this case, let's get back to the computer at hand. Down there, you can see this has 3 memory slots. These are PC133 DIMM slots. That's dual inline memory module slots. You can see down there are some dip switches. Now, I believe, if my memory is not faulty, that is for setting the speed of the processor. And I did have, I'm not sure where it is. I think it's on the bottom here. There's a chart that tells you what the dip switches are and then what you have to set them at for each processor. Like if you had a 733 megahertz processor, you would have to set the dip switches differently from like this one being an 833 megahertz processor. And I may eventually get another stick of memory. Right now, this is rocking two 128 gigabyte sticks of PC-133, so got a total of 256 megabytes in there. I believe this can go up to either 384, or if you can actually put 256 megabyte sticks in here, then you can go up to 684. But I'm thinking, judging by the age of this motherboard, you're probably going to be capped at 384 megabytes. That's pretty much it, tubers. That's all I've been doing so far with this custom built P&P Pentium 3 computer. Wow, that is really a tongue twister. If somebody knows more than I do about this USB 2.0 card, I downloaded the drivers from the VIA website, and I double checked, it was for this card. I installed it, but for whatever reason, it's still running at USB 1.1 speeds instead of USB 2.0 speeds. So, if anybody has any ideas what the problem could be, let me know. Maybe just put it down there in the comments. I'm going to do some more work trying to figure it out. But another thing I want to show you guys, and this really speaks to the quality of the manufacturer. Most computers from this era suffered from what they call capacitor plague. That's basically when the capacitors would mushroom up and they would eventually explode. But as you can see, all of the caps on this particular motherboard are in excellent shape. Nothing is bulging, nothing is leaking from what I can tell. And if I ever take this motherboard out, which I probably should do, I'll look underneath and make sure that they haven't started leaking from the bottom. But other than that, I am very, very happy with this computer. I've gotten it almost to where I want it. A few more tweaks that I need to do. Again, like I said, I really would like to get an AGP graphics card for this eventually. But it works just fine with the PCI card that's in it now. All right, tubers, let me double check, make sure I didn't miss any questions here. Eric Brunhammer says, also, it should be easier to do tech videos with yard sale season coming up. LOL. That is true. And believe it or not, I can still find some really cool vintage computers at yard sales. It's not too often that I do, but I would say at least once or twice a year, I do come across something cool along the realms of this particular type of computer. One more thing before I go, I did want to remark. I wanted to answer a question that somebody had sent me a few months ago, talking about mounting your hard drives. They said, "Do you really need to use all the mounting screws?" And I said, yes. Now, in this particular design, this is two-sided. Basically, both sides of the case come off. You take the two screws out of here, and the other side opens. And you basically see the same thing. You have two screws either side, so there's four screws holding on each hard drive. And yes, I do recommend using all four screws. And the reason being, the platters in these hard drives are very delicate. Say you were moving the computer around one day when it was on, you shouldn't do that, but inevitably people will do that, and you were to drop it even from a short distance, a foot or two, and you didn't have those rear screws on there, that drive, just from that drop, could be shaking up and down. And believe it or not, just that little bit of motion can actually damage the platter on the hard drive. That can actually make the heads make contact with the hard drive platter and do permanent damage, because the heads only sit not even a millimeter above that platter, and it takes just that little bit of jostling to actually do permanent damage. So if you have computers, and this goes for anything, even modern computers that have Mechanical hard drives, we're not talking about solid state hard drives. This only speaks to mechanical hard drives that have a spinning platter. Then, yes, you should always use all of your mounting screws that are available to you. Now, some of the cookie cutter HP Dell cases, they only give you the option of putting on one screw per side. But generally, most custom cases like this will have the screw holes mounting properly. In other words, you'll be able to get at least two screws per side. And believe me, when you have all four screws in there, those hard drives ain't going anywhere. All right, tubers, hope you guys enjoyed this live stream. Please stay tuned to my videos. Got hopefully some more vlogs coming up this week. Let me turn you guys around here, that way you can kind of see my ugly mug for a minute. Again, I do apologize for the videos not really coming as much as they should be. I am suffering with some very bad allergies right now. As you can probably hear, my voice is going. I know, right? It's very typical this time of year, but believe me, there will be more videos coming in the near future. Please continue to like and subscribe, and as always,